my dudes, my guys, my freaking boys. All right, so I have a ton of people that ask me weekly, you know, do you do this, do you do that, do this, all about stance car stuff. So I would like to make a video about all the stance car stuff that I can think of off the top of my head, all the questions that you guys have asked me over the years off the top of my head, and all the common ones I get off the top of my head, and just get it all out. This is exactly how you build a stance car in different stages. Everything that you need to know should be in this video. If it's not, please comment below and I will answer. I'd like to just, when people ask me questions, I just want to send them this video and be like, this is how you do it. So we're gonna get right into it. Let me start off by saying, do I know everything about stance cars? Absolutely not. It's a constantly evolving thing. It's not really like having a race car, stuff like that. It's way different. So it's constantly evolving. Do I know stuff about your Buick Regal that was made in 2008? No, I don't. This is mainly for Civics, Integras, CRVs, stuff like that. That's what I'm very familiar with. That's what I grew up doing. That's what I grew up building. It's kind of what I built a business around. It's kind of where I'm at today is because of stance cars. So I'd like to at least give back to the community as much as I can. So there's 3 stages of stance cars in my eyes. You have the people that put like their lowering springs on or their coilovers, and it's the first time they've done it, and they scrape mud flaps and think it's the lowest thing on the face of this planet, right? That's your first step. If you're that low, this is probably not the video for you. When you get to step 2, this will probably be the video for you. Step 2 is the people that now have their coilovers on. They're maxing it out. The car rides like shit. The upper control arms are hitting the strut towers, stuff like that. It's mainly what we're gonna fix. And then there's the third step, which is where I feel I was, which is you have a raised motor, you're dragging through the literal floorboards and getting holes in your floor and stuff like that. That's when you're actually low in my eyes, is when you start like breaking real stuff, not just the exhaust. That doesn't matter. So I guess we'll just start off with, let's just say this is for a EG Civic or an EK Civic, because that's what most people are gonna have, and they're both basically the same. So the first step, the first problem you're gonna come into, after you lower it enough, your upper control arm is going to hit your strut tower, right? I have a whiteboard here, so give me a second and I will draw all this stuff out for you guys. I actually went out and Target and bought all this stuff so that we could see it in real time. So this is what we have right here, and this is going to be your strut tower right here. So this is your actual car, this is your upper control arm, and this is your spindle right here, right? So what's happening is, and there's your lower control arm. So what's happening is the car can only go so low physically until something has to hit, right? So before the floorboards of the car hit the ground, the upper control arm is going to hit the strut towers. And the way to rectify that, of course I would drop that. The way to fix that is you take stuff out of the spindle and you get the spindle to drop down. So you shorten the spindle basically. So when you shorten the spindle, now you have room in between your strut tower and your upper control arm. So that'll be the first thing. Now, getting into that, diving into that a little bit more, is the shortened spindles, right? What are they good for? I have so many people hit me up. It's not gonna say it's the most annoying question, but it's very annoying. Everyone asks, they say they want more camber, so they want to tilt their spindles, okay? There's a bunch of reasons why that's super incorrect. Can you add camber to a shortened spindle? Yes. Can you add a ton of camber to a shortened spindle? No. If you want like 15 degrees of camber, that's not really the way you want to do it, okay? So let me draw something else again. Okay, so what we have here is, hope I'm holding this up high enough. So what we have here is you have your stock setup where your upper control arm is very close to the body, and you have a stock size spindle, right? So the more angle that this upper control arm is facing up, the more negative camber you're gonna have. Essentially what it's doing is, as this comes up, it's moving your spindle in and out, right? So when it comes down, you get more positive. When it goes up, you get more negative. So when you shorten a spindle and you bring that control arm down, you're moving the distance between like where it would bolt on the lower control arm and up here. So you're bringing it back out. So essentially you're giving yourself some positive camber back. So when you tilt the spindle, when you tilt the spindle, what you're doing is you're compensating for this angle here since you just cut it out. So you are adding negative camber into it, but what you're really doing is you're just giving yourself this exact setup that you had here, and you're able to go a little bit lower. You're giving yourself this setup here, but you're making it the same camber as if it was here, because if you just weld it straight, it's going to add camber, right? So with that covered, so here's another thing with tilting the spindles, right? So factory, you know, say this is your wheel, you know, your tire's up here like this, your tire's down here like that. This is your outer lip of the wheel right here, the part you want real thick with your negative offset. This is the inner barrel right here, the ones that always crack. This is your spindle right here. And factory, you have this, I labeled it this right here. It's the distance between the inner barrel and the spindle, right? So, you know, factory, you have some room there. So the only way you're really going to hit that is if you run a super crazy positive offset, which literally no one's going to do. Or you run, I guess, like, for whatever reason, if you ran like a 15 by 10 with like a plus like 45 or 50 offset or something like that, it would hit the spindle. The car wouldn't be able to move, right? So when you tilt these spindles, I guess I can hold it up here. When you tilt these spindles, this is what you're doing, right? This is what everybody thinks is where you get all your negative camber from, and it's not. This is super not where you get it from. So when you tilt that spindle, the wheel, this is your wheel again, you know, this is your tire. Your tire sits up here like this. This is your outer barrel. This is what you want with all your negative camber. This is your inner barrel, the ones that always crack. So that wheel comes in and it will hit the spindle, right? Because essentially you're just moving the bottom half and you're tilting it up. Well, there's nowhere for that wheel to go now, so it's going to hit the spindle. So people that are thinking that you're getting negative 15 degrees from just the spindles is not a thing. That's just physically, that doesn't work. Maybe I'm an idiot and there's other ways to do it. I don't know. I've been doing this stuff since, I don't know, 2013, something like that. Been doing it long enough to have this stuff figured out. So this is why a tilted spindle doesn't really work. A proper tilted spindle is just going to give you the right amount of camber as to where if it was like dropped normally like we just covered. So that about covers it with the spindle side of things. I have a spindle video that that I have done in the past on my page. If you go look it up, how to build shortened Civic spindles. Let's just call this the spindle again. I know I'm drawing them like an idiot, but I'm not a very good drawer. There's actually hold on, I can do one better than that, a little bit more accurate. So these spindles are actually shaped like this, right? And then your hub comes off of here, and that's where your lugs are, right? Or your wheel studs are, right? So Stance Shack, Burnout Star, and some of those guys that are doing this stuff, Marsh, I think he does them too. They're cutting them right here, right? And you can take distance out of here, and what that's doing is that's pulling this upper part out, which essentially is bringing all this stuff in. So I guess instead of saying moving that out, you're really bringing this bottom part in, which is going to give you more camber. That has its own issues with doing it this way. That's when you start to lose the distance between your wheel, because remember your wheel sits here. You start to lose distance in between here. So it has its pluses and it has its minuses. You can definitely get more camber taking it out of here than you can taking it out of the top like I used to do. Somebody's here. So taking it out of the top right here is what I like to do, and what that allows is it just drops it straight down. You don't have to worry about the distance, so you have more room between here and here, between your wheel. So right there, you get a lot more room in between there, so you can run a more aggressive wheel, a wider wheel, stuff like that.
So I will say that the downside to doing it that way, I forgot to mention, is that you don't get as much camber. You can't add as much camber back in because your upper control arm's just dropping straight down like we covered before.
Now, for whatever reason, from what I've noticed lately, is everyone wants big camber. Everybody wants a crazy camber. For whatever reason, I couldn't tell you. I'm not a huge fan of it. I think, you know, if you have like -10, that is more than enough that anyone needs. I've personally built a set of knuckles for a car that ran -25 degrees of camber. It is not for me. It is what it is. People are into it. If you're into it, you're into it, I guess. I'm not into it. I like cars being low, and I'm not saying I want the wheel straight up and down, because you got to fit some wide Johnnies in there, and you got to have turning radius and all that. So I do like some camber, but so the way that people are getting tons of camber is, so you have your lower control arm here. Hopefully you guys can see it and it's not all shot out. And this is where your ball joint goes. And then the ball joint sits in there. Then you kind of have your spindle. Let's call that your spindle. This is your hub right here. You have your strut. That's your coilover right there. And this is your inner mount right here to your subframe. So what you have now, this is the setup that you're rocking now. This is your lower control arm here. I'm trying to look at my camera to see, make sure it doesn't have a ton of reflection on it. So the way people are getting camber, so I think a lot of these people that think the tilted spindles stuff is what's giving you all the camber is not actually it. What's giving you all the camber is people are cutting the control arms right here and extending them out like that. So now what you're doing is you're taking all this stuff and you're moving it out here like so. And then now you can see that ball joint is going to be out here, right? So when it does that, this whole thing has to come out, which is going to take the wheel and shove it in like that. And that's going to give you more camber, etc., etc. So the way to get big camber is extended lower control arms. Now, here's the thing with the extended lower control arms. I don't do them. I don't like it. I mean, like, I like to help people build, you know, what they're thinking and stuff. I think that the lower control arm stuff is kind of sketchy for me. I don't like cutting into a cast lower control arm. I do like a lot of drift car 240s, Mustangs, stuff like that. I'll cut into like a sheet formed lower control arm per se. Here's my idea. I haven't seen anybody do this, and I don't know why, so I'm just gonna throw it on here. Maybe somebody will do it. You can have all the credit for it. I think it's significantly safer. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments, right? So let's call this your lower control arm right here. And this is the mount for it, right? This looks super appropriate. And this is the subframe right here, right? And then your bolt goes right through here, right? So instead of extending the lower control arm, why not extend the mounting point off of the subframe? And then that'll do the same thing. It'll be 18 million times stronger because you'll be able to brace like the bottom side or whatever, or the upper side with some type of sheet metal and hold it all together. So not only will it have weld here, on the other side you can also plate it and box it in. It'll be super strong, and that'll get you, you know, you can really move the lower control arm out at that point. That's my idea. I haven't seen anybody do it. Maybe people are doing it and I don't know about it. That's what I would do. But if you want big camber, basically you have to get your lower control arm out. Now, on RSX's, 8th gens, anything with a McPherson strut, if you don't know what a McPherson strut is, you don't have an upper control arm, right? So McPherson strut stuff is you have your coilover, and then your coilover has like a little bracket off of it normally, like Volkswagens are the same way, like this, and then you have your knuckle, right? And that's what everything connects to. Your ball joint comes out of it, all that, and then you have your spindle or whatever, and then your wheels off of that. So if you have this style setup of suspension, which is, like I said, it's called a McPherson strut, you can look it up. Super easy to get camber out of those. Basically, you can go to Ace, True Value, Lowe's, Home Depot, literally anything. And I actually don't have any laying up on my table right now. But basically, you're just going to make these little plates. And it's just going to be like a little square like this. And you put 2 circles in them like that. And you put this is going to go into the factory hole, and this is where you're going to put the new strut through, or your strut bolt through, and you're going to do it on the bottom. So this top one will stay up top. So this will be a factory one, and you're going to put the upper one through there, and then your lower one, you're going to put a your strut bolt through there, and that'll camber it. Tons. Done that on RSX. So now we got camber out of the way. We got what else did we get out of the way? We got the whole spindle situation out of the way. So after you run into that, you're gonna start running into oil pan issues. You're gonna start breaking oil pans and stuff like that. And this, I can make this its own video, but you're gonna have to raise the motor, okay? So different cars have different issues with that. EFs, EGs, and Integras, all the factory mount on both sides is like a pocket. So you have to extend that pocket up. Now Stance Shack, and I think Burnout Star's doing it too. I don't know if Marshbuild's doing it, but all of them, they're making these brackets that people are using them. I don't like them. But basically all it is it's the same thing as the RSX thing basically. It's just a bracket that has two holes in it, and you'd put your factory bolt through here to hold it in place through your like factory cup. So say like this is the little cup mount or whatever that you have. So that factory bolt goes through there, and then you bolt another bolt through here, and that's the one that goes off to your engine or transmission or whatever is what that one is. And then I think now they make like to where it comes back and it rests on the thing. The thing I don't like about these is I don't like that they're able to move. If there's some way to stop them from moving, I think I'd like them more, but I'm just not really a fan of this style. I know it works. People do it. People have great luck with it. So you can do something like that, and then in the back you would just run spacers. Like I make my own spacers like this. That's all they are. So the back T bracket mount, you would just run spacers and stuff like that. Now for EKs, I'm gonna plug myself. I make motor race kits for EKs. So this is a EK motor race kit right here. The motor side on the engine would get 3 spacers, and then the rear T bracket mount that goes to the subframe would get 3 spacers, and then this is the one that goes to the transmission. So I seen Stance Shack and those guys, they make a pretty cool one where they just modify the stock one that comes off of this. I modify the physical piece that goes here. This has its ups and downs also. Everything with the Stance car stuff does. This moves your mounts this thickness, which is I think it's like 3/16 or something like that. It's not much. It doesn't really matter. So mine, you would bolt this into the factory bolting location, and then you'd mount your trans mount onto here, and then that gives you a 1-inch lift. So with that being said, before we move on anymore, with the motor raise stuff, everyone, it blows. I cannot fathom it. It makes me so frustrated. I always have people ask me, oh, how high does it raise it? And I'm like, it raises in 1 inch. And they're like, oh, well, you know, I want 3 inches, or I want 4 inches. I had somebody tell me I want a 5-inch motor raise. Okay. Getting worked up. So when you raise a motor in a car, you have to, there's a ton of things that have to get thought about, right? So A is the top of the motor to the hood. That's where most cars are limited, is that is the main issue. You know, B series EF, we always used to call them a B series bump, because if you close the hood too much, like one of the valve cover studs would hit the hood and it would leave a bump in the hood. So that's how close some of these motors are to the hoods. So like a B series EF, if you raise the motor, I think mine was raised 1.25 inches. I had to cut the entire hood out. Even at 1 inch, I would have had to cut the entire hood out. For EKs, I'm still trying to get measurements on a B series one. No one's come through. So if you have an EK with a B series in it, and you don't want to do a motor raise lift thing, but like if you just want to take some measurements for me, I'll pay somebody at this point. I'm looking for that. But the CRVs have a ton of room between the top of the motor and the top of the hood. Like, it's a lot, like a lot. So you would think, oh, cool, we'll just raise it to the top of the hood, right? Well, then you have to think, well, now you're bringing all of your axles up, so you're gonna have to C-notch it. We'll get into that. You're bringing your axles up, so you're gonna have to C-notch that. The exhaust, like where the exhaust goes under the subframe, all that's now coming up. So you're gonna have to modify your exhaust, or basically your header. Essentially, you have to modify your header. And then the cars with the solid shift linkages, I know CRVs are cables. The cars with the solid shift linkages, you have to think all that stuff's coming up too. So you can only go up so high until you have to start really, really modifying stuff. Can it be done? If you wanted to raise your motor a foot out of the hood, you could do it for sure, 100%. You would have some kind of crazy axle angle, but I'm sure it could be done. Is it pointless? Absolutely 1000% pointless. Normally an inch, I know an inch with the single cams and the EKs, you will quite literally rip a lower control arm out of the car before you break an oil pan, or like, unless you like hit like, I guess like a rock or something and came and hit the oil pan, but like from physically hitting the ground, you're going to rip a control arm out before you break a steel oil pan. I will put money on that. And so that's that. Like I said, I could do a whole topic on that. That's just the basics of that. As for motor race kits for other cars, I have been interested in doing EGs and stuff like that. The reason that I don't do them, honestly, is there's not a market for it. If I spend, you know, $400, $500, $600 to make a handful of mounts and no one buys them, I'm out of that money. It's a gamble that I have to take, and I'm not willing to make that gamble. The other issue is with the EK, the style that I make, this style, you can do that with a H series, a B series, or a D series. It's all the same. With the EG and EF stuff, it's a different mount for everything. So I'd have to make actual mounts, which I would love to do, but for the price I'm gonna have to charge for them, it's not worth for me. It's not. Like, I'd have to charge you guys like $300 for them or something like that, and no one's gonna want to pay that. So I'd rather just not even mess with it. I've had people message me with RSXs and like Accords and TLs and TSXs, second gen CRVs. It's all stuff that I would like to do, but I physically have to have a car here so I can look at it and figure something out. I know I can do a 9th gen. I had somebody that was very interested in it and bailed out, but if I had a 9th gen here, I could build a kit for it like all day. So it's something I would like to get into, but I gotta have the car to do it, you know what I mean? And no one's willing to drop a car off to let me do it. So that would be the next thing, would be the motor raises, okay? So after you raise your motor, you can now go a little bit lower. Your upper control arms aren't hitting the strut towers. Now you're not breaking oil pans, you're not breaking transmissions, you're not breaking anything like that. So what's the next thing that's gonna happen? The next thing that's gonna happen is the axles are gonna start binding most likely, or you're gonna start rubbing through the gas tank. So let's go to the axles first.
To be fair, I didn't cover the axle binding stuff. I just showed you a picture of me shortening an axle. I can go into more on that. If you guys are interested, just let me know in the comments, and I'll make a whole nother video for that.
So, see, this is your factory frame rail right here, right? That's your factory, I guess I could just draw it longer. That's your factory frame rail. That's on your Civic. And then you have, normally the trans would be like right here somewhere. Let's call it like that. So that normally your transmission would be right here, and your axle would come out here and go like this, and then it goes out to the wheel or whatever, you know? Like, that's how it would normally be. So when you raise the motor, now you're bringing this axle up, right? And with it raised an inch, you're not gonna have any issues. You're not gonna have issues with it hitting, oh, I guess I didn't need to erase this. You're not gonna have any issues with it hitting the frame rail or anything like that. It'll be close, it'll be like that, but you shouldn't have any issues, right? So, for a normal person. So when you start putting this thing really on the ground now, I'm talking about like on the ground. Now you're starting to hit the floor regularly. You know, you can start road reflectors out of the ground, stuff like that. What's going to happen is your axle's getting up here. And normally you can see it happen before it happens. If you go look at your, like where the axle goes under the frame rail, you'll be able to see like fresh metal from the axles rubbing and stuff like that. You also get like a really weird feeling in the steering wheel. You'll feel that and stuff like that. So what you got to do then is you got to C-notch the axle. And I know a lot of mini truck guys hate stance car guys because they're always like, we've done this first, we did this first, we did this first. But it is what it is. So this is your normal frame rail. Normally your axle would come through here, right? Well, now it's rubbing, so you're hitting up here. And you know, when you pull your wheel off, you might have like a little indent like this or something like that from it hitting. But what you're gonna have to do is you take a piece of like I've seen people do it with like exhaust pipe. I think it's a little bit thin. I use like a stuff that's a little bit thicker than exhaust pipe, but what you do is you take a hole saw and you go right above this little bend. There'll be like a little bend right here because it has like a little bit of a radius. Go like right here and take a hole saw that's like a 2-inch hole saw or something like that and run it down through there, and then take the pipe that you have and fill it, put it in there, and then cut it like this, and then that's your piece, and that gets welded in, and now your axle can live up here, and it's free, and it's not hitting the frame rail, and it's all hunky-dory, and it's nice and happy. So that's how you do that. You're gonna have to do that. Also, another thing that's gonna happen at some point when your car gets really down there is the tie rods will start hitting too, and you'll start getting really weird steering stuff happening. So you got to C-notch the tie rods. I had to do that on my old car. So after all that, or along with all that, about at the same time as that, is you're gonna start dragging through the gas tank. So now you have to decide, you know, is this something I really want to do? Because now it becomes kind of like a chore to own a stance car. And this is all strictly static stuff. The bag stuff doesn't matter. You can just air it up and drive like an F-250 down the street. Whack. With the fuel cell stuff, you can either get like a 5-gallon or 10-gallon fuel cell and throw it in the trunk. That's all cool. I've seen people take, the way that people were doing it back in the day when I was doing all the stance car stuff heavy, when people were still trying to figure stuff out, is they were taking the stock gas tanks and putting them in the trunk. That way you could still run your factory filler neck nozzle and stuff like that into it, which is pretty cool. I've also thought about, I had a customer come by with an RSX, and we were just talking. He said he started to hit the gas tank because I guess in the RSXs they hang down really low. I've always thought about taking one, cleaning it out very good, clearly, get all the gas out of it, and cutting it and shortening it, and then, you know, just run different straps, like modify the straps that hold the gas tank up, and then you're good to go there. So you got to figure that out. There's a few different ways to do that, and that'll be that. Now, once you start going lower than that, this is about where I was now. So now the issue is in the rear, the camber kit is going to start hitting the body, and the rear trailing arm tunnel is not going to be tall enough. You're going to start resting, your rear trailing arm is going to be resting on the body. Also, the tire, depending on, I mean, I had a pretty big tire. I had a 15 by 11 with a 195/50 on the back, so it was a tall tire. A lot of people do 165s and stuff like that, a smaller tire to help. So what you're going to run into is the tire is going to hit the wheel well. That's one of the issues. So the car is physically not going to move, so you got to tub the wheel well, cut the wheel well out of it, move it up, weld new stuff in, or leave it out if you're an absolute Neanderthal like me. The other thing is the trailing arm tunnel. I've seen a lot of people just hit it up with a hammer and clearance it that way. That's one way to do it. You can always cut it out, move it up. That's the right way to do it. And then the camber kit is going to hit the body, and with that, you can kind of like drill holes and like cut a hole, and it'll just sit up in the body. That's the easiest way to do that, and build like a little cap for it. And then with that, now your front is going to start hitting. So there's like a seam weld inside of your, say this is your front wheel well, right? There's like a seam right here. And if you've made it this far, I forgot to mention it, but if you've made it this far, you've probably already done this. So this is your wheel well, your tire's sitting right here or whatever. There's a seam right here, and most people hammer this seam flat, right? So you're gonna have to do that before all this stuff I mentioned now, but that seam gets hammered flat so that you have distance to go up. Now, the issue that I ran into, I was running a very wide wheel. I was running a 15 by 10 with like a negative 50 or 60 something offset, like ignorant, in my old car. The thing that I ran into is I got so low that on the outside of that, because my tire sat outside of all that area, there's like an upper frame rail. So you have like, this is like your lower frame rail down here, which is like further back. You have an upper frame rail. My tire started to hit that, so I actually had to cut into that and tub all that, and then I could go. But the issue with that is I couldn't turn. There's only like this much room to turn the car at that point, so that's another issue I have there. So that's everything I can think of off the top of my head. But if you've made this far into this, you're probably very into this and trying to learn stuff and stuff like that, and I super appreciate it. But the main thing I'm going to tell you from experience, I've been doing this for a long time now, is don't let your stance car become a chore. A lot of these people that people are looking up to, I'm not going to drop any names, but a lot of people that people are looking up to on the internet right now, their cars aren't driven. They're kind of like lawn art. I've seen tons and tons and tons and tons of Instagram pages, all these famous Instagram people that are all slammed on the ground, which is cool. They drive down the road and it's just constantly dragging the ground. You know, if you're into that, that's cool, whatever. But realistically, they're not driving these cars anywhere. They're not taking them to a car meet. If they're driving them, it's like down the road. You know what I mean? They're not taking them to actual places. They're going to like the gas station like a mile away or something like that. And it's not fun anymore. I got to that point with my car and it became less fun to drive. I couldn't take it to car meets I wanted to take it to. It becomes a chore to own. So when you're deciding to go low or add a bunch of camber or whatever, just think about, you know what I mean? Like in the back of your head, we all want the lowest car possible. Every car looks fantastic, just slammed out on the ground. But please, 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 for the love of stance cars, this is why they're dying. Make it drivable. It's cool to be super low, but if you can't take it anywhere, what's the point, man? At the end of the day, it's just a car. It's to drive. And if you can't drive it, then it's kind of pointless. I used to clown people that trailer their stuff to car shows. I was always a very diehard, I'm going to drive my car there type of person. I think I only trailered to like one. All right, my bad. My camera died, or my GoPro died. So what I was saying is, you know, at the end of the day, you want to drive your car places. You want to take it to car meets. You want to do all these things with your car, and you can't do it if you can't drive it, right? So only go as comfortable as what you're going with. Don't make it to where you can't drive the car anymore. It's cool to say you've done it. I've done it, but it just kills the car, man. It makes it not fun anymore. So that's what I know. I hope you guys have appreciated this. I hope this will answer tons of questions. If you liked it, please like, comment, subscribe, all that. I appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.